Okay, it's enough. Sit down.
I wore a shirt because I thought you'd need a microphone, and then I realised halfway here, you're not going to put a microphone on me, are you?
No. Thanks for thinking of me, though.
Yeah.
You know a little bit about this.
What are you doing? Over this side. No one wants to see your butt in the shot.
We're going to get away with this, do you think?
What, with him? Really hope so. I didn't want to bring him,
He'll
but
settle down.
I had no choice.
Yeah, he'll be all right. I think if he walks around and he does things, like it's pretty obvious at this point that there is a dog here. so yes, if you hear a little clattering of claws, then it's Enzo.
A little creepiness.
Yes.
That's a ghost.
Yeah. Why we're here? I don't know why we're here. I just, characters. This podcast is an excuse to have great chats with people.
People in well-lit situations.
In well-lit situations, perfectly natural. Okay, do you want a hard question or do you want a difficult question?
Let's do something pretty easy.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Right. Are you competitive?
Am I competitive? Do you know how much thinking time do I have about these?
Do you have as much thinking time as you want?
I think when I've been competitive, it's been. I think
with the dog.
I think you want a treat, don't you? And this is your last treat because this is not lie down. I think when I've been competitive in the past, it's a difficult question, and it really shouldn't be a difficult question. Do you mean like in a sporting sense, or do you mean like in a professional sense, or do you mean in a life sense?
In a life sense.
In a life sense. I think when you're younger, it's really easy to see people around you, people you've been to university with, and you want to do better than them, and you want to strive to have more success. But what that success looks like is often quite distorted because you're judging it off of what other people deem to be a success. So in that respect, I think competition and being competitive is pretty healthy, and you need to have that because it's what stands you in good stead for the future. But what you don't want to get into, what I look back and realise that sometimes when I got a bit blinded by losing focus on what I needed to achieve, competition turns into jealousy, and jealousy has no value. It's just a waste of time. I think competition where you're inspired to do better by somebody else is a good thing because you're inspired. What do you think?
Well, but talking about just on your point about jealousy, can you tell me about your relationship with envy?
I'm not an envious person. I think society makes us materialists, whether we like it or not, and then it's up to us to kind of remove ourselves from that. And it's really easy to get into a trap of like, I want this, or when you're younger, it's very easy to look at that materialism and have envy come out of that. And that's a really, really distracting thing because stuff doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't make you happier. It doesn't drive you forward because you don't learn anything from stuff. I think my only envies are that when I meet people who speak more languages, because I'd like to do that, when I meet people who have traveled more and had other experiences, I wouldn't say I'm envious, but I'm certainly like, well, I'd like to strive to do that. But there's only so many days in the year, and there's only so many hours in the day. So you have to let yourself go a little bit.
So you use it as a tool.
I think in the past, a little bit of envy can be channeled into the right, into motivation. Yes. And I think from a business perspective, any business is better when they strive to do more than the competition. But I think you have to not take that into a personal level where it starts to eat into you. And I think probably keeping competition on the business side of your life is quite a healthy thing, because then you can channel it. Where if you start to take it into your personal life, then that just becomes rotten. He's got his nose in my
your
crotch.
crotch.
Over here.
Luckily, we have a close up.
Okay. Are these answers you expected?
No, I'm just
got questions.
I'm already regretting this. Yeah, absolutely. When do you feel shy?
When do I feel shy? I've stopped feeling shy. I think when you get older, you start to not care. And what I think shy is wrapped up in what people think of you, and really what people think of you, to quote RuPaul, what other people think of you is none of your business. And that's quite a liberating statement. As soon as you lose that worry about what other people think of you, then you become quite liberated, and you can just be yourself, and you can find yourself, and you can relate to people that you're around, and you can adapt. And that's good to form friendships and form connections. I think I was probably a little bit more shy when I was younger. But that's something I've inadvertently let go of, I think, just because, like I said, after 40, you're just like, well, I'm just gonna enjoy my time. I enjoy my space, enjoy my friends, enjoy my work, enjoy my family, and I don't have time for that.
What did you used to get shy about?
I think I have to think about this. I think I used to get shy. Yeah, I think I used to get shy because I used to worry about what people would think about me. So sometimes it's easier to say nothing. And I think certain environments can be quite intimidating. I mean, I think at school I was a lot more reclusive and a lot quieter and a lot shyer than I needed to be, because I really shouldn't have cared about other people at all. That said, shy wasn't a big part of my personality. It was just moments and certain times.
Just drawing into that experience, though, and now as a dad,
yeah,
how do you feel future generations with the internet and everything how that's gonna affect them?
Ironically, I see a bit more shyness in the kids, potentially. Let me think about that. The honest answer is I don't know. I think obviously the COVID generation is going to hit different points. Some people didn't have their university experience. Some people didn't have bits of their childhood. So I don't know how people will be affected by the modern era and modern life. You'd think people would be less shy, but I think obviously digital technology gives us all opportunity to hide behind the screen, and then how people react when they come into the wider world is obviously going to be a bit different now.
I guess part of what I'm interested in doing is sort of highlighting experiences from your life that people can listen to and grab onto and and take on board. And we've worked together for quite a while now, and I know what you're like, and I know how loyal and sort of how you prioritize things. But I'm wondering if you have ever acted without 100% integrity.
Let me have a think about that. I think in work, I think you'd have to define 100% integrity, and that sounds like a bit of a cop out. But at the end of the day, I think one of the things that I probably struggle with is checking in on whether I'm in a situation that's fair. And this sounds a bit. This might sound a bit weird, but sometimes I'm probably thinking about other people a bit too much, and I lose sight of what I need, because I think being part of a team and having connections is really important. So sometimes I probably get a bit lost in what other people need, and this isn't something I identify myself. It's just what other people tell me. So. Yeah, I mean, there's as I've changed businesses, and I was very closely aligned to a company many years ago, 20 years ago, that was going down the drain, and I had to take action, and pull myself out of that, and all my equipment and all my technology. I was making DVDs at the time, and I had to extract myself from it. And that was quite a difficult thing, because there were certain clients, and there was a member of staff who wanted to come with me, didn't want to stay in that business anymore. But at the same time, that company had kind of given me a bit of a start. So it was a conflicted time for me. But at the end of the day, under much deliberation, I had to make a move. I had to pull myself out of that situation. And as much as I built up friendships and trusts, those evidently weren't being, on the backside of that, other people weren't being the way that I wanted to be with them. So in the end, I had to go and start off again on my own. And that's part of the natural cycle of business and life. And that's, but it didn't come naturally to me. I was very uncomfortable with that. And now looking back, I just think, I should have done that 6 months earlier, because the end result was always going to be the same. Instead, I just procrastinated and wasted time, and I'd have been better off if I just got on with it. Instead, I dilly-dallied and delayed because I didn't like the situation that I was kind of found myself in. I'll give you another example. As you know, there is a company that I won't mention that has gone into administration, owing me a large amount of money. At the point that I was putting in the paperwork to say, look, I'm taking you to court to get this money, I let people from that company talk me down, and say, we're going through really tough times, and they were having problems, but they were doing a lot, and X, Y, Z, and blah, blah, blah. And I thought about the people that were being made redundant from the company, who were people that I started to know quite well, had a lot of respect for, knew they'd gone through difficult times. And then a few weeks later, they go into administration anyway. And really at that point, I should have thought about myself. I should have thought about my family. So my answer to that question is, what does integrity look like? Am I showing integrity to myself and to my family, or am I showing integrity in the way that I'm working and considering other people who are really, as much as I like them, they're not my concern, if you see what I mean. Again, another difficult lesson to learn. The short answer of that is does acting with integrity actually change things always? And does it make a difference? And the sad answer is no, because not everybody does, and it's all relative. But I'd like to think that my core belief is to always be responsible, thoughtful, because you don't want to leave this earth thinking, well, I went through screwing people over. And a lot of people who work in business do that.
So there. So tell me about conflicts.
In what respect?
Well, your relationship to it?
My relationship to conflict.
Because it feels to me like an avoidance of conflict was the reason why you didn't do it 6 months earlier. Difficult conversations.
I think I don't. No one. I want to say no one likes conflict, but at the end of the day, there are people out there that love conflict. I have my own conflicts with conflict. Let's just put it at that. At the same time, let's take that in micro situations where you're sitting on a team of people, you're working with a client, and the ideas and the process that's coming through is not going to work. And if you are unable to step that way in and say, the way you want to run this project, it's not going to work because you're going to hit this barrier, that barrier, you're going to have that problem and that problem, and it's not going to land. If you don't have that ability, then what you end up doing is making not such great stuff that doesn't work, and also starting to believe that you can't make the right kind of content, you can't do the right kind of job. So having the ability to step over a little bit of conflict and open things up in a way that is a bit humorous and a bit fun and very collaborative, at the end of the day, it's still very conflicting. And sometimes a lot of conflict can be very easygoing if you know how to approach it. If you see what I'm saying.
I do. I think that's something I've always admired about you, is the way that you navigate those conversations.
Okay.
And which is why I'm so interested in asking about it.
Okay.
Because it's something that I think you do very well.
Right. Probably learned a lot of that the hard way.
Well, sure. I feel like I'm a bit of a bulldozer sometimes, and it's very bit more black and white rather than sort of massaging is maybe not the right word, but just cultivating the relationship between the person and trying to just not smooth things over, but just make it okay, and something, just a problem that we're working as a team to get through, rather than you're right, I'm wrong.
It's 100%. I mean, and sometimes you've got to create a slightly conflicting. You've got to put across your views that will not match a client's or somebody else's, in order to get the information that you need to maybe change your mind, or maybe come up with a new idea, or maybe understand better. Because sometimes people just, in all walks, in all situations, they don't give you the information that you need. Which I'm laughing as I say it, because I often do this to you. I kind of people only give you the information that they've got time to give you, or that they want to give you, and so sometimes you're working behind a bit of a curtain, and then you're just working in a way where you're just like, either you're just like, well, I'll just carry on diligently doing something that I don't really believe is the right way, or you just get annoyed. So bringing about those conversations is really important, so that you can understand and better what are the needs of the people you're working with, and that goes for personal life as well as work life. That comes into everything. Even if you're complaining because you're taking something back that doesn't work, that you bought in a shop, you've got to be able to approach it in a way that's going to get the best result, not be a bull in a china shop.
Negotiation.
Let's make every conversation fun, and life will be better.
Again, something else that I really admire about you is that
Thank you.
fun is always the priority.
If
it's you said this to me, like, if it's not fun, I could go and earn 80 grand a year driving a truck.
Well, yeah, I mean.
So what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, this is it. Is that there are, I mean, and not to take anything away from a train driver who, lots of kids always want to be train drivers, but let's face it, there's a lot of very highly paid jobs that don't give you the room to be creative, that don't give you the room to be expressive, that don't give you the room to be spontaneous. And what we do has all that there. And sometimes we can lose sight of how much of that we really do have because of briefs and timelines and budgets. But in reality, we have the scope to have an enormous amount of fun and do things in many different ways that can be really interesting and get to meet loads of people. And as you just said, you can get a job where you don't have any of that and get paid a lot of money. And maybe that's what you want. There's plenty of people out there who just want to be left alone all day long as well and don't want to talk to people.
Yeah, I can understand that. Who has offered you the most useful career advice?
I don't think there's been many people who've actually given me advice directly. There's just people that I've watched and I've learned from over the years. And I think the time I had advice was when I was much younger. I was in my mid-20s. I'd just starting up a business on my own, and there was people that I met along the way. There was a chap who worked for a large investment bank, who was like a friend of the family, if you see what I mean. And I sat there with my business plan with him at the point that I talked to you about, where I was looking to jump ship because I was involved with a company that was in decline. And he spent some time just going through my books, and he didn't say it wasn't that he said you should do this, we should do that. He just said I'd invest in this business if you want some cash. I'm what you've shown me here and what you're doing, I'd definitely invest. I didn't take investment because I didn't understand business at that point, and if I had have done, I probably would have done better. But I carried on doing what I was doing, and it was good, and it ran really well for the years that DVD was still a thing. And so that chap gave me a lot of advice. And that's the only time that anybody's actually sat down with me and kind of given me direct advice. Otherwise, there's other people that have just given me small little moments. Going back to our earlier conversation, one chap who was a client of mine, when I was getting really stressed out by another client and I was ready to blow my top, he said to me, "Look, don't blow your top because shit sticks. And whatever you do, once you've blown your gasket, you can't ever come back from that. And industries are not big. All industries are quite small and they're quite incestuous. So as much as you're in the right to be angry in this situation, don't lose your rag." And that was a really good piece of advice. And that's probably what I've carried through through the rest of my working life.
I'd certainly say that good advice has stuck to you. Have you ever sabotaged your own success?
I think I fight against sabotaging my own success all the time, from project work and confidence issues, because when you're very close to your work, you just see loads of holes in it. You see loads of things that aren't right, and that through when I was a bit younger, that's really damaging. If you don't have that arrogance to go, you know what, I don't care about that problem because the rest of it is really, really good, then you can end up just not really feeling very good about what you've done. And even though it's brilliant, it can eat into your your momentum, your self-confidence, your ability to showcase, your ability to show off. And the reality of the world is, to be successful in business, you need to be able to speak with authority. You need to be able to be super confident about what you can do and what you have done. And you need to be confident in talking about your work, and have that slight level of arrogance. Because if you don't, you just fall into the shadows and be quite shy. And that's, now looking back, that's probably my shy side, but not as a personality. So I think every creative person does sabotage their own work at some point. That is a step along the way, and that is how you learn, where you truly get good at what you're doing, because you get into the minutiae, and then you learn from those mistakes. What you mustn't do is then let those mistakes rule your momentum and your self-confidence and your self-worth. You've then got to put those to bed and bring back the arrogant side of you in that small way, and then move forward. And that's a difficult thing to do.
I'm just really interested in your work ethic, and since we've met, I've admired it. But I'm interested what you think in how you might be a difficult person to work with or for.
Wow. Are you going to give me any clues here? I think if you're someone that likes to have everything planned out, then like seriously planned out, then that's not going to work very well with me, because I like to have a plan, but there has to be room for things to just wander off and go with how the project needs to just organically evolve, if you see what I mean. So when we're shooting, I certainly want to have a plan of what we're doing, and what needs to be achieved. But at the same time, I kind of want things to grow naturally and go with feeling. So I don't know if that kind of is a bit frustrating sometimes. I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure what are the things that make me difficult to work with. I'd be all ears to find that out. I think probably what makes me a bit difficult to work with sometimes is just sometimes the volume of work that I have going on at any given time, and my ability to manage that. And sometimes I think I'm pretty good at managing how many things I've got, how many projects are juggling at the same time. So, I mean, I think that's always going to be a perspective thing. So for someone who I'm working with like yourself, it's probably a bit frustrating, because you're probably not getting the information out of me, because I might not know the information, because I'm just not asking the right questions at that time. And perhaps that's just because I don't have time, or that's because I know that I can't put a client under pressure about certain bits of information that I don't know they have, blah, blah, blah. I think my time is the biggest problem for everybody that I work with. And that comes about, and I know why that comes about. That's because projects, at the point that they should be finished and they should be closed off, and then I move on to the next project. They don't get closed off and they don't get finished, or they do get finished, but then they get reopened, and because people change their mind, and everybody is allowed to change their mind, and I want to give them that opportunity. But then I've moved on to another project. So I should imagine it's quite frustrating for a client sometimes that I can't instigate those amendments and those changes immediately when the project's been finalised because I've had to move on. But at the same time, I'm struggling to get myself in line for the next thing because I've got the pressures from a legacy project that should be closed off by now. So you either work in a way where you have massive buffer between each project, but then financially that's not practical, and organisationally that's not practical, or you just try to manage these situations. And I can imagine that is a bit frustrating, but I would not think that I am unique. I would think that's probably across the board. That I met a designer through a friend of a friend a few years back, and he had installed a 2 changes rule on his work with his clients, and basically said that is it. And at the end, if anybody wanted any amendments, he said no, which everybody thinks that wouldn't work. I mean, how would you, and apparently the change within his client base had been remarkable. Some people had left, some people had stayed with him and sorted out their process and realized that that's a much better way of being because you can be more productive. But either way, he said his life was a whole lot better. So, it's difficult. It's a difficult balancing act there. I would say that's probably where I end up being the most difficult to work with, but I just don't know. So I'm open to your feedback, Jack.
Well, I can give you some in due course if you like.
Okay.
Honestly, there isn't any. I mean, there's a little bit of frustration occasionally with regards to information. Just being able to give my best to what you need and to serve the job and serve the result as best I can. But all in all, it's not really a complaint. It's just a frustration. But yeah, I'm interested in why you haven't implemented a rule of that type, if you know that it is one of the frustrating things for your clients.
I think that I don't think the people on my client list have if I'm absolutely sure, have the ability to be that direct with all the stakeholders that they have around every single project. There just isn't that communication in large corporate machines. There's generally far too many stakeholders. It's generally death by committee. And when I do projects where you have 1 or 2 people who are the project leads and they're the decision makers, then projects run faster, smoother, quicker, and the end results are invariably better. And they're cheaper. And in large corporate, there is a large number of stakeholders. That's always the way it is. You always deal with 1 or 2 people, but there is always a group around these, and they in those groups there's personalities. There's good personalities and there's bad personalities, and everybody wants to be heard and everybody wants to have an opinion and everybody wants to have a say. So that's where those projects start to roll on. And I think I just got to expect that will happen, and manage the way that those situations arise and how I complete those tasks. So I think we are going down without getting into the whole amends argument, we are going down a slippery slope of always having the option to change things, and people always thinking about things later. And I think as costs continue to come down in production and AI continues to rise up in its capability, people will just keep changing their minds and keep on going, well, we could have this and we could have that. And that's a very creative process, but it's very, hindsight is a wonderful thing. You can always change true like genius, or someone who's really good at marketing, someone who's really good at being a creative director. They will see these things before we pick up a camera, before we step into a recording studio. Seeing it afterwards, well, that's not difficult. There has to be an organic way of making production, but at the same time, people lose sight of the audience, and they get involved in just new ideas a bit later down the line. Do you see what I mean? A bit late in the production process, and that's where it all starts to unravel. So yes, to try and round up on that, I think the importance of instilling a certain number of rounds of amends at the end, at the end of a project, is going to become more important, because with AI, you're going to be able to change things and change things and change things, and soon enough, you're going to end up with projects that just roll on for months and months and months, because unless someone says this can't be changed, the project will never be complete. And organizations don't have necessarily the one person that's the executive that's going to make the decision about, yes, this is complete. It's always going out to a range of stakeholders.
Because there's never one person to blame.
Well, it's not, there's never one person to blame, but you want, in large organizations, you want buy-in. You want buy-in from everybody in your team and the wider business. That makes sense. But that can overtake the more important thing, which is the audience, the viewers, the people who are you're receiving, who are receiving the information. And everything must start with who is receiving the information and how they're receiving it, and understanding the concept of the death of the author. Because if you get lost in what you want to say, then that doesn't mean that what you want to say will be heard. So you've got to always keep your eye on the people who are viewing and consuming whatever you want to say, whether it's an instructional video, whether it's a narrative video, whether it's just a training video, whether it's photography. Whatever you're making has to start with who you're talking to, and then what you want to say to them and what you want to receive. And that's where it can all get a bit lost.
Yeah. Big time. And I get that. Get that from working together. And it's very interesting to observe. I hope you feel observed. We're doing well, mate.
Look, and the dog's finally sorted his shit
Let's
out.
enjoy it. Oh, mate. There's some fucking crackers on here. Oh, I'm just going to enjoy this. Finally got my teeth into you. What's the kindest thing that anyone has ever done for you?
I think I'm a very lucky person, because everybody around me is incredibly kind, and I've struggled to answer that question, just because people are very kind to me all the time. It's difficult to answer, because I have people that in work, they're incredibly supportive. I have people that in my personal life, and also people that cross the two. And to be honest, most people I work with kind of cross the two. I think there's no single there's a few single events that maybe where I think, that was amazing that person did that for me. But let's just put it into a broader spectrum. The kindest thing that anybody ever does for me is just listen to me, and hopefully the kindest thing I can do for anybody else is listen to them. And I think that there's been moments where I've had difficult times because I've done something silly, or I did something where Astrid got hurt, my daughter got hurt, and and I just talked to a couple of people around me, and they were very reassuring and told me, listen to me whilst I went through that difficult moment. And that's really the kindest thing that anybody can do, is just take 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe a full hour out of whatever they're doing, just to listen at that moment, because at the end of the day, that's worth an immense amount. And it can really save, listening to someone can really save them from, days of darkness, or making a mistake, or feeling terrible, or helping them through stuff. If you listen to someone, they talk something through, you ask them a few questions, someone asked me a few questions, I work something out. You're literally giving someone answers, or letting them see they find their own answers. And by doing that, you're handing someone days of their life back. You don't really realize it, but in those moments, you listen, you don't judge, you help someone move forward, and you give them their life, you give them their self-worth, you give them. That's incredibly powerful and incredibly important.
Do you think people regard you as a good listener?
Probably not, because I don't have a lot of time. I think at one point in my life I was a really good listener. I really tried to be a good listener. But at this point in my life, it is more difficult, and I have failed to do that for some of my friends, and I regret that. But at the same time, there is only so much that I can do, and I've had to kind of just let go of a few mistakes where I haven't listened to people. I haven't been there for them in the way that I have been in the past, and I do feel bad about that. I do feel bad about that, but I can only learn from those mistakes.
And you can only do so much. There's only so many hours in the day.
And there is, and I think, yeah. So I think, listening is incredibly important, as I've said, because let's take it in a work perspective. Listening to someone's ideas, listening to what they need, having a think about it. If you don't listen to it, you can't think about it. You can't say, well, how about this? How about that? Have you thought about? And then you can put a bit of input back, and then give someone ideas, and then their project gets better, or it meets their needs better, or it gets cheaper, or it gets bigger, or it gets you evolve ideas, and at home and in your personal life, the same thing is just as important. You listen to someone about a relationship or a friendship issue, or the fact that they didn't catch their kid as they fell over, and it helps them move through it and move on to the better parts.
I think you're a great listener.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Are you good at taking criticism?
I've worked hard to be better at taking criticism, and quite a few years ago, I remember sitting down with a client actually in the US, and the first thing I said to them as I showed them some stuff that we'd made was, I want you to be aware that as you watch this, you just tell me what you need and what you think, because I have no personal, don't hold back, because I will not take anything personally, and we don't have space for that. I want to give you the best product that you need, so you need to tell me. And that lady, I remember, kind of looked at me a bit shocked, because someone I hadn't worked with before, and I don't think anybody had ever said that to her before. I think there was always kind of a diplomacy, or how do you keep creative people on side? And so, I realized a few years in that I have to let go of what I'm doing, and I'm not making my project, I'm making their project, and so therefore criticism is a path to giving someone the asset that they need and they want and they're paying for. So it is a good thing. It's a step forward, and that again, that goes into life. Hell, I've been through a divorce, and there was a lot of criticism in there. And if I'd listened to that earlier, then a lot of heartache could have been avoided. But at the same time, listening to the criticism and taking on board avoided a lot of extra heartache as well. So I think listening to criticism is immensely important. And there's a lot of successful people in the world who don't listen to criticism, and they are very successful because of it, because they just bulldoze through. But you have to decide whether you want to be someone, that looks back on your life going, well, was I part of really good relationships, or was I successful? I want to look back and look at the human connections I've made along the path of what I've done.
That comes across very clearly.
Okay.
So you're doing well. Not that you need my judgment on that, but
well, I mean, it depends what you want out of life. It's all perspective. Do you want to be successful and I've got pots of money, or I've released a film, or I've started a business and expanded it and sold it. Do you want to be that person? And I'm not going to say that, but then lots of people look at you and go, well, yeah, but you're not a very nice person, because what other people think of you is none of your business. So it shouldn't be about that. But at the same time, am I being the person I want to be? Am I involving myself in people that I respect and I have respect for? Or do you go through life of surrounding yourself with people who you always have to be circumspect with, because everybody's got an agenda and everybody's got ambition. Have some ambition, but it just doesn't look like other people's ambition.
what's your ambition?
My ambition is to feel like I fulfilled my role in the world. That I was part of. That I was part of things that made people's lives slightly better, slightly happier. Maybe that's through what we made at work. Maybe that was just through the process of making those things. So I think my ambition is to just leave the earth behind, feeling that I had good connections with people, and that it's not about not wanting to be forgotten or anything, because everybody gets forgotten in the end. It's just about having made the right connections with people and had a good life that's fun, and get the most out of being human, because being human is about connecting with other humans. It's not about just making loads of money, which isn't a bad thing, or is it?
You're a legend. What are the best things that you owe to your parents?
Genetics. What are the best things I owe to my mum and dad are definitely genetics, and that sounds just maybe that sounds a bit weird because I'm not a super sportsman, I'm not super intelligent, but I am who I am. I look the way I look, and I'm connected to them. And obviously, I lost my father when I was quite young, so I think it's been quite important for me to, see him in me, because now I'm older than he was, and that was a difficult point to get. That was a different part of my life to cross over. To become older than a parent is quite mystifying. So I think that I'm quite lucky that I look a certain way and I have a certain set of mannerisms and I have a certain way of being, and that obviously all comes from genetics and obviously all the hard work that my mum did bringing me up as a single parent. Yeah, I mean, forever indebted, really. I owe a lot to my mother to fight the battles she had to fight as a single parent in the 80s and in the 90s, and what that meant and for her. And that's something I'm quite inspired by, but also I'm also inspired. So my mum and dad had very different journeys. So my dad grew up in a fascist dictatorship in Spain, and he did everything he could to fight his way out of that at the earliest opportunity, get across the border and discover what freedom looked like. So I think that's an inspiration in today's world. You know, in the life that we live right now, has been up until a few years ago something that is so disconnected from the lives that we lead in the modern day society. So, and then, my mum grew up in this country, but she, lost her husband at a young age, was left with a young child, and she went to university to try and better herself so that she could earn a good living, so that she could be a good role model and also just provide food on the table. So there's lots of inspiration, and there's a lot of inspiration that's come from both my parents.
Who or what has stopped you from realizing your full potential?
I feel like you planned this question. The reality of life is that there is only one person that stops you from realizing your full potential, and that is you. And the only person that I can blame for not realizing my full potential, what that looks like, is going to be me. And yes, there are people around me. There's people I work with. There's people in my life. There's people who are my friends that, maybe I got distracted, or maybe I ended up going down a work path that for a while maybe wasn't the right one, or maybe I didn't follow. I love that dog. Well done. You've guarded us all. We're all safe. Come and sit here. Sit down. Lie down. Sit. Lie. Good boy.
Good boy, Enzo.
So yes, there are distractions, and there are people, and there's some people, and yes, I've had people that I've worked with say to me, the you can't come on, we can't come on this price, or or the project work doesn't have that much value in it, or XYZ. And there's I've come up with ideas, and then it's been, oh, that's going to be very difficult to implement, or it's going to be very difficult to do this or do that. And, I can't blame those people for holding me back, because if they discouraged me from doing something, maybe they were right. Maybe it wasn't the right time to do X, Y, Z. Maybe working with certain technologies wasn't the right thing. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. Yes, it's easy for me to look back and go, and for a long time I did look back and go, this person held me back, that person held me back, that person really ate into my self-confidence. But the reality is it was up to me at the time to go, what, I shouldn't be pleasing this person. I should be thinking about myself. And this feeds back into your questions around conflict and those things. People will often do what they need to do, what suits them, and that often doesn't suit my path. Again, friendships, relationships, work. And then you've got a situation where you've got to go into you've got to figure out how you broach that conflict of direction and path, and what you want to achieve and what someone else wants to achieve in their lives. And at those points, yeah, I'm sure people have held me back, but I have to take responsibility that on my own. I can't, all I can do right now is not feel bad about that, and I have to go, well, now's my time to implement that change. How do I do that? Is it still important to me? Am I doing it just for the sake of it? Or is it the right thing? And maybe that time has passed. But your life is your own to lead. You can't blame other people.
And do you believe you live an ordinary or an extraordinary life?
That's a very relative thing to comment on. At this moment in time, my life is incredible. I have a 1-year-old daughter. I have a fluffy hound. I have a stepson. I have an amazing partner, and these things are incredible. No, it's definitely. And then also work-wise, I have some people who I work with who are extraordinarily hardworking and very inspirational and a lot of fun. When I look back at how my life has been, it has been amazing up until this point. I've travelled enormously. I've travelled with work a lot. I've travelled just on voyages of discovery. I can't do this with you being like this, so otherwise it's going to be a weird shot. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Yes, when I look back, the things I've done have. I just think, well, I didn't realise what. I've raced mountain bikes down a glacier. I've travelled to volcanoes in the middle of lakes in the Philippines. I've been, I've driven across America. I've been to New Year's in Rio de Janeiro. I've really been very lucky that I've had people around me to inspire me and have also played off the things that I've wanted to do. And that when I look back, I just think, wow, I've had some really great experiences. I'm really lucky. And having an extraordinary life really isn't about being famous, or to me, it's not about being famous or having loads of money or any of those things. It's literally about how you spend your time, and you can look back and go, well, I was really lucky to do that. Even as a kid, when I think back to like the old family albums of when I was a baby, there is photographs of me at Stonehenge, and I am there as a toddler. I'm putting my hands on the stones, now you go past Stonehenge and you can't get anywhere near it. So even now I look back and go, well, how lucky was I to have that fortuitous moment that people don't get anymore? So I suppose it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I'm really happy about so many of the things I've done, so many of the people I've met and the places I've been to, and sometimes the difference I've made, hopefully, in some people's lives. Yeah, it's a good question because it's made me remember a lot of good, fun things.
Thanks, mate.
Is that it? What do you think, Ben? Thanks. This is what we need. We need constant
beratement
so that we can
keep going.
Yeah.
What up, mate? How was that?
Yeah. No, it was good. It was good. It was really good questions. Because you can't you know, sometimes you think, if I do say what I really mean here, someone might watch it and then it would be really awkward. But at the same time, there is that opportunity to just really think, you know what, your life is up to you. Your life is up to you, Jack. And it's really easy thing to say to someone, if you're not happy about X, Y, Z, then the only person that can change that is you. And there's some people in some really difficult situations in the world who really can't change their situation and where we live and the life we lead. We are so blessed because we actually can change so much. We just sometimes don't want to because it's outside our comfort zone. And we are so, as I said, I've been, every time, like I've been skiing quite a few times in my life. Every time I stand at the top of a ski lift, I just think, wow, how lucky am I to be in this place in the world that really humans shouldn't be hanging out. We're only here because it's mechanized, and we've got the technology to do that. And I'm here for recreation. There's so much that we're very, very lucky to experience. There you go. Job done.
Job done, mate.
You know what? You weren't so bad, dog.
You got there eventually. Oh, wow!
I'll tell you a little story. You ready? So, as you know, we've been making a lot of over the years. I've made a lot of
Haven't gone again. All right, let's just go. Just go with that.
So over the years, I've been lucky enough to work making small video, mini documentaries, interviews with patients, and met some people who have been through some really difficult times with their health along the way. And I think this is quite an interesting thing about people and experience. And sometimes I remember doing one video with a chap who had had a very serious condition. He had necrotizing fasciitis, which is where basically infection gets into your well, you can look it up. It's a very fast moving situation, and you can die very quickly. And he got very sick very quickly. When we got to interview him, about 10 minutes in, it became apparent he'd never really talked about this situation. He'd obviously described it to people, but he'd never, until we actually got the cameras on him and we started asking him questions and getting him to walk through the situation blow by blow, he hadn't actually had this conversation really, I don't think, with very many people, if at all. And suddenly we're on a journey with this guy, this chap, through one of the most traumatic moments of his life, where he really was very close to death's door. And, you know, I truly realized that going and filming that interview with him wasn't, I mean, it was about going and filming an interview with this person and getting that content and all of that, obviously. But really, there was so much more that was happening for him in that moment, and he was actually working through the situation and coming to terms with it. And that, you know, it's something I think about a lot. It's not just about what we do and what we come away with. The process of what we do and the process of making videos and doing photography and everything is almost as important potentially as what we make, because sometimes the impact on someone can be that profound. If we approach everything we do in life that the process is as important as the thing we're trying to achieve, then life can potentially be very fulfilling and value, and those moments can be far more valuable. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
So there you go. There's my little story. If you want to include that.
The important thing is whether they understand what you're saying, and I'm sure they will, because that was very, very well articulated.
Come on, dog. Let's get out of the way.
Amazing.